Hello and welcome back to the Artisfy Codecast. Today I'm going to be starting to build the outputjs library and then hopefully finishing it over the next couple days. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to show you an example of some code that we might have on a live website. Actually, that very soon we are going to have on a live website. So this is an example page, and you'll actually notice, if you've seen the previous video where I create a bunch of, example use cases of switches, this version that I have right here is very close to one of the other versions. But anyways, so this is some code that we might see on Artisfy, where we have the page container that's going to contain all of the pages data, and then the first bundle on the page. And we're probably going to have multiple bundles here, so you can imagine that there's like 4 bundles here. But for now, we're just going to work with just this one bundle. And a bundle has a title, it has a description, it has a price, it has a number of revisions, it has a timeline embedded into it. But for now, we're just going to focus on this one item, the bundle title, and how do we inline edit that title. So I showed you in the last video, how the switch.js library can work together with the copy layout library in order to put an inline edit box right above an editable component. And if you don't remember what that looks like, let me just open that up real quick. And actually, I think I want a different one too. Okay, so this as an example of using switch.js plus copy layout. When you click this edit button, let's pretend that this black rectangle is a button. When you click this edit button, it'll pop up this component right above the component that you want to edit, right? And you can see there's also this backdrop here, and that backdrop is also going to appear over the screen so that it makes the user focus right on this editable area. Okay, so I have the switch code already laid out here, and we have 2 actions. So we're going to turn the backdrop on whenever the title is clicked, and we're going to turn the edit title inline edit switch on. And so what that's going to do is it's going to add a data attribute called data switched on, and it's going to be equal to backdrop when this is clicked. And then it's also going to turn this switch on because this is the edit title switch. And the edit title switch in this example also has an alternate name. And so when this is turned on, it's going to get 2. It's going to get the edit title and it's going to get the alternate name. And like I said in a previous video, this alternate title is going to allow us, if we have, say, multiple inline edit elements, say this one's called edit description, then it's also going to get the inline edit name applied to it when it's activated, which makes it so that in our CSS, so if you can imagine having some CSS, down here, just pretend that, this is our CSS file down here, we can have inline edit, and then we can say, we can have an attribute selector that says data switched on, and then we can use the tilde selector, which allows us to select based on a group of space-separated words. So we put inline edit in here, and now we've selected this element as well as this element, and so we can just say display, block, and give it a position or whatever, right? And the reason we would want to do that is because otherwise we would have to have multiple attribute selectors here, or data data attribute selectors here, one for each type of inline edit. So we'd have to have one for edit title, one for edit description. So that having this custom name allows us to just have one. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to get rid of this example. So now we've got these things turning on. So when you click this, we're going to get this attribute added, and it's going to get backdrop in it, and we're going to get this attribute added, and it's going to get these values put into it. Now, what I forgot to do, and I honestly just forgot to do this, is to add a data copy layout attribute. And we want to copy the layout, so the width, the height, and the top and the left position of this title element onto the inline edit element. So first we need the target for this, and then we're going to have the offset. So we're going to have 0, 0 for the offset. So it's, it's going to be exactly positioned on top of it. If we wanted it to be pushed down, 10 pixels and over to the left 10 pixels, I think this, no, this is your left. Anyway, I'm not sure. Anyways, then we would do something like 10 and 10. But we just want it to be right on top, so we're just going to do 0, 0. Now, what do we want to copy? The width and the height, or both? And we're just going to say both there. And we have a second, the ability to have a second selector here for the element that the width and the height are going to be copied onto, but we're not going to use that. We're just going to copy it right onto this selector. Okay, so now, if we have our CSS already set up, this is going to work. Okay, so this is a basic inline edit setup. And if you think it's a lot of code, that's because it is, but it's not as much as like writing your own custom component. And it's all pretty self-explanatory once you understand, the syntax, the data switch actions, and the data switches syntax. And you can kind of just like know exactly what's going to happen just by looking at the HTML code, or in this example, the pug code, which transpiles into HTML, or compiles. Transpiles? I guess transpiles. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is add some input JS attributes. And the reason I set this up is so that we can kind of specify how we expect the inputjs library to work, so that when we're building it, we don't just like build something that kind of fits what we need. We're pretty sure that it's going to be exactly what we're going to need, and it kind of makes sense just like typing the code out. This is, the same as like having a great idea for a novel or a story, and then typing that out, and then realizing like, oh, like this doesn't quite fit, that doesn't quite work, maybe this isn't such a great idea anyways. And then, sometimes you decide to stick with it and you actually make it into a great story. And so that's what we want to do here is we've had this great idea, I think, right? And we just want to type it out, see if it kind of works, see if it kind of makes sense. We already have kind of played around with it, so I'm pretty sure that's a good idea. But let's make sure. Let's add this to the page. So first of all, we're going to get this data-i-store, and we're going to add this to here. And I guess I'll put this above the switches because I think it's a little bit more important. And then we have, oh, you know what I messed up? So this title is just an input, right? It's just going to be some text. So let's instead make this a timeline item. This doesn't really change anything that much, but in Artisfy, timeline items have, like a text. It has text inside of it. It has a type, and it has a size. So that's going to give us more things to style and let us, make this example a little bit better. Okay, so we're going to say timeline item here, and we don't have to change this for it to work, but we do want to change it just so that it matches what the real code's going to look like. And here we're just going to change edit title to edit timeline item. Inline edit can be the same, that can be the same. Okay, so everything else is the same. Okay, so this is a data I store. So this store, I'm not sure about this naming this store, but what it does is there's going to be a listener, an event listener, for when for whenever a switch is turned on. And so let me show you an example. So I just want to look up I want to look up how to actually include code inside of bug. Okay, so yeah, we can just use this dash, and then I think we can use, code inside of it. So maybe syntax highlighting will work here. Maybe not, but let's try it. Let equal. Okay, it seems like it works. Okay, so what we're gonna do here is we're just gonna have it we're just gonna I guess we can use the real example. So it's gonna be like switches when, and then we're going to have, I guess this is kind of gonna be what we're going to pass in, but it's not exactly the syntax we're using. I think we're actually using an object here, but I'm not gonna bother with that because I just want this to be kind of quick because it's just an example. So we're going to say, when a switch is activated. So we're going to pretend that the first argument is like whether we're looking for activated, deactivated, toggled, or like anything, right? So we're going to say it's activated, and then we're going to have the switch data here, and we're going to get the element, and we can say like this is the switch element. And I know this isn't the exact format of the data, but we're just going to pretend that it is. And so what this is going to do, what the output library is going to, or sorry, the input library is going to do is it's going to say, okay, whenever a switch is activated, look through the switch element and try to find me a data I store, okay? An element with data I store in it. And, it could actually just, let's just say, look at. So it's just going to look at this element. It's not going to look through it. It's just going to look at the element that was activated. And if it has it, okay, so we're going to say is data I store, then what we're going to do is have the switch element store the triggering element on it. So we're going to get the switch element, and we're going to have a property on it called source element. And if you didn't know this, this is something you can do in HTML. It's not something that a lot of people suggest doing. But say you have an element selected on the page, we can access that, we can access that with $0 in the console. So this is the current element we have selected. We can say, anything, blah, blah, equals 1, 2, 3, 1, whatever, some number, right? And so let's look that up, and boom, it's just a number. We can assign something else here. We can say it's an object, and when we look that up, we get the object back. So DOM nodes can store information in them. It's really not a great practice because you might have, so first of all, I think it slows things down just in general, because I think the browser's code is optimized to not deal with DOM nodes that have things added onto them. And then the other thing is, you might have a JavaScript library that uses some native functions, or it might I don't know what it would have to do, but maybe, maybe it loops through all of the like native functions and does something with them. I don't think that's really a use case. But anyways, it's not a great practice, but we're going to use it here because it's very convenient for us. So the other option for this, by the way, would be to make like a little dictionary where we'd have like a global object, right? So we could say uh, like global store. This isn't what you would actually do, because actually in a previous video we found out that you can't use a DOM node as the key in an object, but it would be something like this, right? I mean, you wouldn't actually do this. You would have, the key. You would have, a key called DOM node, and it would be equal to this, equal to that element. But anyways, we just as like pseudocode, right? You would do this, and then you would set this to like the data that you want to save, right? Whatever the data is. And then when you wanted to look it up later, you could just plug this element in to the function. It would be a function. It wouldn't be an object, right? As we just said. So anyways, that we just want to save some time. We don't want to do that. We just want to set the source element to be switch data dot like trigger element. And I know, again, that's not the exact way the data is organized, but just to give you an idea. So now this, if this is activated, right? So it's activated right now because we're pretending that we clicked on this, right? So if this is activated, that means some data on this is going to have the source element key equal to the trigger element. And I know that works. I tested that before, at least in Chrome. No, but I'm pretty sure that works. So, and if it doesn't work, we have another option, right? We can use the global store. But for now, we're going to pretend that works. And then, so what that's going to allow us to do is after we save this data, we're going to transfer it back to this timeline item. So let's keep going with this example. So in here, we're going to have a text, and we're just going to say a type. Okay, we're not going to do the other choice because that's above what we really need to do. So we're going to have a div here because I don't know what to call it yet, and we're going to make it div iChoice, and then we're going to have another div here, and inside of that we're going to have data I key and data I value, and the key is going to be equal to the type to type, and then the value is going to be equal to, let's say, feedback, and then let's add a couple more options in here. And so this can be like work, and this can be payment. Okay, so these are like some key components of the freelancers process, right? They get feedback, they do some work based on that feedback, and then they get paid for it. Okay, so one other thing is we're going to move this attribute actually up to here. And so just to quickly explain, or just to quickly go over again, what these data I values do is when you click on one of them, it's going to, so if you click on an element with a data I key on it, it's going to look for a data I value. If it finds a data I value, it's going to climb up the DOM until it finds an element with data I choice on it. And then on that element, it's going to set a data O for output key, and the key's name is going to be the name of this key, right? So we're going to have type, and then the value is going to be whatever one you clicked on. So for now, let's pretend we clicked on the second one, which is work. Okay, so that's going to, what does this actually do for us, right? What does this data iChoice in combination with this data OKey thing do for us? Well, in our CSS, we're going to have, we're going to want to style these things. So let's actually call this something. So we'll call it like a type choice. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to say, oh, okay, well, with this type of element, the inline edit timeline item, it's going to possibly have a data attribute on it called data o key type, and one of the possible values is work. And when that is true, then we want to style the type choice. So we want to have the type choice of data I value, work equal, be highlighted in some way. So here we can say it's got a border of, I don't know, 3px solid black. Okay, so the other ones are going to have the same thing, right? So we're going to have, let's just do one more example, right? So we'll just do feedback up here. So this is going to be the same thing. But if I click on feedback now, what's going to happen? Well, it's going to climb up to the data iChoice, and it's going to set this data attribute, right? Because that's the value of the key is type. It's type for all of them. And it's going to set this to feedback, right? And you know the key has to be unique, right? There can't be more than one data O key types on here. So it's going to overwrite the old one, and now we're going to get the border around this one and not around this one, right? So this allows, so basically you're able to temporarily store some data on here on the parent element, the parent inline edit element, which doesn't really matter. Temporarily storing the data doesn't matter, as we'll see soon, you know, because every time this inline edit is triggered, it's going to overwrite all the data inside of it. But, oh shoot. Okay, that's something I forgot about before. There's a little specific thing that I need to watch out for about that. Namely, I'm planning on, you know, when this is activated, getting all of the data from its elements, all of the data-o-key data, and adding it to these elements. But I think one thing I forgot to think through is, okay, what if I inline edit this, right? This timeline item. So I click on this is activated. I click on, you know, the work choice, right? So feedback is currently selected in the actual bundle timeline. This timeline item, you know, well, we can actually show that, right? So we can say data dash o dash key. Geez, I'm bad at typing right now. Okay, dash type is equal to, I don't know, I forgot what I said before, but it's equal to feedback, okay? So now I open this up, and this currently doesn't have anything on it, right? So then I click on, yeah, okay, so that's what I forgot to do, right? I need to set on the data, so let me just write this down somewhere, probably right here. So when this inline edit element is activated, I don't like saying inline edit element because that makes it pretty tightly coupled, and I want to be able to use this, you know, for other things other than inline editing. But we're just going to make it tightly coupled for now, and down the line we'll loosen it up. So when this inline edit element is activated, make sure you Yeah, so make sure you apply any data I choice um, key values to it, key value pairs to it. So basically, so we're going to need to check, what are the choices in here so that we can set this right away, right? So that we can, use these styles to show which one's been selected. And also, we wouldn't want to run into the situation where, this is feedback, this hasn't been set yet, and then you click on work, right? And so then it sets this to work, and then you click, cancel, right? And then you open it up again, and when you come back to it, work is selected. Because that doesn't make any sense, right? Why is work selected? I just saw on the page that feedback is selected. So you want this to match the data that's on the page. So this is the thing we need to do. We need to make sure that make sure you apply any data I choice key value from the source elements data O key values. Okay, and so in order to make that easy to do, because I guess what we could do is crawl through all of the child elements and see, oh, do you have, any choices that match this? That's too much work. So instead, we're going to change this syntax slightly. So it's a good thing we did this experiment where data iChoice can have one or two or three or as many values as we want, all space separated. So we're going to have data iChoice, and then we're going to just say type in there. So now, we can go through all of the data on this element that activated this inline edit and all of its children, and grab all of its data O, it's all of its data attributes, all of its data attributes, right? Because it's all the data attributes that are storing data. And then we're going to look through the data I store and see, oh geez, well that's going to require us to have this data I choice right next to the data I store, which begs the question: why do we have a data I choice? Why not just attach everything to the data I store? I should call it data input store instead. I mean, just when I'm talking about it, because data I store makes it sounds like a sentence or like a phrase. Okay, so the data input store. So I guess, but no, I like the choice. I like it being decoupled because then I at least I have the option of moving this down here. And I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, when the inline edit, make sure you apply any data attributes pairs to its children, so to it and its children that have, make sure you apply any, okay, any key value pairs from the source elements data O key values to it and its children that and its children to it and its children if they have data I choice or matching data I choice attributes. Okay, perfect. So that's clear, at least to me. I hope it's clear to you too. But yeah, so we're just gonna, so if we have this data O key on the triggering element, we're gonna look through this element and all of its children for any data I choices that match it, and then we're gonna set this. And if you're wondering, why the heck are you doing this? Why are you creating custom radio buttons, basically, and kind of like polluting the DOM with all these data attributes? I wonder the same thing a lot, but I think it's going to be worth it in the long run. I think all of this is going to be worth it. So, I mean, yeah, no promises, right? Okay, so, and let's call this type choices. Okay, so now we have the type choices. This has been activated, so this is going to be the same as the source elements, right? Okay, so next let's do some like text. So let's say, let's just put it like here, okay? And we're just gonna have it be a raw like input just right in the component. It's not even gonna have a container. So we're just gonna say like input, and we're gonna say like timeline. I don't know, we could just have it be text, whatever. We're not actually building the page. Okay, so then this is going to have the attribute of type equals text, and this is not, you know, anything I'm doing. This is just, we want this to be a text input. And sometimes I forget, honestly. I'm pretty sure that's what it, yeah, type text, yes. Okay, because we have like type password, we have type email, type text is definitely a thing. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is have this have a data I key on it, and we're going to say that this is just equal to text. So I mean, this gets confusing because, you know, we have a class equal to text, a type equal to text, and then a key equal to text. Okay, so what happens here is this doesn't have a value. So what this is going to do is this is going to have an event listener on it. It's going to say, okay, any input elements of type text that have a data I key on it, whenever, no, sorry. It's not whenever they're changed, because this is something I was thinking about doing. When you edit this element, I was thinking about adding, you know, another data O key for it, but I don't think that's necessary. So actually, instead what we're going to do is we're going to just, so we're not going to do anything with this. It's not going to matter until you click the save button. So you can just use that however you want. You can edit, you know, insert text programmatically. You know, you can combine, you know, you can do whatever you want with it. Nothing in it matters until you click the save button. Okay, so now we get to the save button. So let's do a button, and we'll just say like save button, and then we're going to have a data I save attribute here. And let's see if I got all of them. So I got the data I stored, the data I choice, data I key, data I value, and data I save. Okay, great. And I should call these data input save, data input value. But anyways, okay. So now when this is clicked, so when any button is clicked that has the attribute, the custom attribute of data I save on it, we're going to climb the ancestors of the element and find one with data I store on it. And then we're going to grab all of the, okay, wait, actually, yeah, okay, then we're going to get, okay, so sorry, so this is a lot to think through. I'm sorry for being confusing, because I know I am. So let me just, I have this other brainstorm over here, and this is kind of like giving me a general overview of what's going to happen. And I should probably add everything to this file. But I'm going to open up a new file real quick, and I'm just going to say, okay, when data I save is clicked, I save, input save is clicked. First, look through its ancestors for a data I store, and I'm pretty sure I have this written down somewhere already, element. Then look through the data I store elements children for this is a problem. Okay, so anyways, data. So this is part of the reason I like writing this out over again, even though I think I have it somewhere else, is it forces me to think through it and if it makes sense. And in this case, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so we're going to say look for any data I key for any data I key elements and grab their data. Okay, so this 1, 2, and then 3, we're going to say apply this data to the source element and its children, however they normally store their data. Okay, so yeah, I'm not going to save that yet, and I'm going to sit down for a second. Okay, so the reason why this doesn't make sense is because I'm handling the elements very differently depending on what they are. So for the choices, whenever you make a choice, it applies it to the data I choice. But when you type in text, it doesn't do it doesn't care, it doesn't do anything. Until you hit the save button. So that means for the choices, that means for the text input, I want to grab its data directly from the element, right? I want to get the value of this element. But for these ones, I don't care. And there's no way to tell that these aren't, there's no way, to tell what type of element this is, except by, seeing that it has a data I key and a data I value. Then you can kind of assume that it's a choice. And then you can maybe like crawl up the ancestors until you get to that choice and then get the data from there. You would actually have to get it from here. Okay, so, and then the other thing about this is that, well, okay, so say I just wanted to get the data for these choices. How do I do that? Well, okay, so like I'm going to find one of them. I'm going to say, okay, this is a, okay, yeah, so I guess that's how I would do it. I would see which type it is, which key it has, right? And then I would climb up to the nearest data I choice and make sure that matches. And then, and then I can get the data key because it's going to match that name, right? So those are going to match. So that's pretty easy. But I think the way that I would rather do it is I want to know what type this is immediately without having to infer it, I think. I mean, maybe, right? So, okay, let's see what that would look like. And this is something that I did have originally, is I think I had a data I type. So if I had that, this is what it would look like. And it would say text, and then these would all have data I types on them, and this would be like, a choice, I guess. Okay, so I don't like it here, okay, because it just confuses things for me. I mean, I think I am like code golfing a little bit here, which is just like, I mean, it's not even, it's just like trying to make things succinct for the sake of making it succinct. But that's not really what I'm doing because this is HTML, right? And you can see that already. This is a lot of code for not that much functionality. And so I want to keep it down as much as I can. So I think if, adding a type to each of these choices is going to add too much code for my liking, I may choose something different in the future. But I think all I need right now is a data I text here. And so that's going to very quickly allow me to know what type of data it is. So, um, so right now, all I need is text types and choice types. There's a possibility I'm going to need more in the future, and I'm not really planning for that eventuality. I think one example of something I'm probably going to need fairly soon is toggles, on or off, true or false. Um, but I'm I'm purpose designing this library to just suit my immediate needs, which are quite simple. So I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, so let's kind of run through how this would work. So when this data, again, sorry. So the data I save button, when you click on it, it's going to climb up to the data I store element, and then it's going to be like, okay, that's my parent. That's where I start. So then it's going to look on that element and on any child elements, going all the way down, looping infinitely through all of the elements and their children until it finds one of two things: a data I choice attribute on one of those elements, and or, no, sorry, or, not and or, because it can't be a choice and a text. So, or a data I text element. And if it finds either one of those, it's going to grab the value. In this case, in the data I choice case, it's going to look on the corresponding data O key, and it's going to grab that. And for the data I text, it's going to just look on the value of this, right? And grab that value. Okay, so I guess I can actually have a value here. Okay, so that makes sense. So is there anything else that I need to worry about here? I think, oh, okay, yep. So adding back the data, that's the last thing. So the data I save button is clicked. We climb up to this data I store. We get the type value. So we're going to have, let's just like kind of spec out the data that we have. I don't know if specify. Let's just kind of specify, let's just kind of, I don't know, let's get an idea of the data we're going to have at this point. So we're going to have type equal to feedback, and we're going to have text equal to, I don't know, but let's just call it like, I don't know, feedback session. And we can even say like initial feedback session. Okay, so this is an example of something we might have if we click this and then we typed in, initial feedback session into this, input box. Okay, so now we have this data, okay, and we're going to have access to the source element, right? Because we attach that to the switch element to start with. So now we're going to go back up to the data I store. We're going to get the source element from it. And then, so now we're here, and we're going to look through the source element and all of its children and apply the data where appropriate. So for for the key type, we already have it, right? It's right there. But how is that key type going to be shown in the DOM? Is this element itself going to have a background? It could, but I think it's more likely that it's going to have something like this: bundle timeline item, and then we'll say like type, and that this is going to be the thing that it has a a little box, and it's either black or red or green, depending on what type it is. So we'll have this as a placeholder there, and you can imagine how that's going to look in the CSS. We already did an example of this, but I'll just kind of do it again. So we'll have, oh, we don't even need the tilde selector here. I keep forgetting that it's only going to have one value in it. So we're going to have something like that, and then we're going to say like, if it's type of feedback, we're going to have a background color of black. And then if it's a different type, like work, it's going to have a background color of green. And this is the CSS again, so this doesn't belong in this file, but I just want to show an example. Okay, so yeah, it just struck me that I don't have an audience for these videos. Like not only do I not have any views on YouTube, but no, more immediately, I don't have like a desired audience. Like, who am I talking to? Am I talking to people who are just starting out coding? Am I talking to people in between? Am I talking to advanced programmers who develop their own libraries? I think I'm more talking to beginners and trying to like give them help in like developing their own websites and their own libraries, and helping them figure out how to think through things. I don't know. I would be happy if I helped someone out a little bit doing that kind of thing. But I think advanced library authors would maybe frown on some of my practices here. But I'd love to learn from them because I think I can always improve. So the other thing we're going to have here is the timeline item text. Okay, so for this one, we actually have a different syntax. So we have the ability to set, where this data is being, sorry, one second. Okay, so we have the ability to set where this data is going to live if we don't want it to live inside of the attribute itself. So here we have the data output key, and then it's going to have a selector, and this selector is not an actual selector, right? Normally you'd have some like name after this, but this we're using to just denote is the current element. And so the reason we have a selector here is that we might have like another element inside of this, and then like this might be like the container, the text container, and so we might want to say, look in here for the inner text, right? I don't know exactly why we'd want to do that. I think I had a good reason for it at one point. I think I had a really good reason for it. So I'm just going to leave the ability to have a selector here. And for this example, we're just going to have it on this element itself. So this might be set initially to, feedback time. Feedback time. And when you click on this item, we're going to pop up the inline edit. We're going to look through all of these things and see if one of the data keys match text, and boom, voila, we got it there. And then we know that this element is a data I text, So we're going to know that we need to set it on the value, right? So then this value is going to end up being feedback time. Then if we change this to initial feedback session, like that, and then we click save, what this is going to do is going to take the initial feedback session, right? And it's going to go to here, and it's going to say, hey, do you have a data O key equal to text, right? Is this part after the data output key part equal to text? And this is like, nope, I've got type. Look further down. And then it's going to look on this element, and it's going to say, hey, do you have a data output key equal to text? And it's going to say, yep, no, I don't have any data output keys on me. And then it's going to go to this element, and it's going to say, hey, do you have a data output key equal to text? And voila, it does. And then it's going to look inside of there, and it's going to say, hey, can I put this new value inside of you? And it's going to say, hey, no, I start with a period. So it's going to be either a hash, for an ID, or it's going to be a period and then some, class name. It's going to say, no, I start with a period. Please listen to the instructions that follow. And the parameter that follows is inner text. So then it's going to say, oh, okay, I know where to set this new data. It's inside of your inner text. So boom, I'm going to put that new data there. I know, it's a little complicated, it's a little convoluted, but once I have this all set up, it's going to be so much easier, I think. Probably not. It probably isn't going to be easier. But I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic that it is actually going to be much, much easier to develop Artisfy once I have all of this code done. So let's go to this brainstorm real quick. I'm almost done. I just got about 5 more minutes. So we have this input, output, init call. And what is this going to do? It's going to call 2 separate but related functions. So the first function is going to watch for when a switch is turned on, check its data attributes to see if it's a data store, and transfer data from the trigger element and its children to the switch's children. Okay, that makes sense to me. Okay, now the one thing, watch for when a switch element is turned on. Okay, so 1, watch for when a switch element is turned on. 2, check its data attributes to see if the turned on element is a data store. 3, transfer the source element's data what did I say first? Okay, transfer the data from the trigger element and all of its children to this newly activated switch's children. And then I think there was something in here, right? So then look through for any now that was when data I save is clicked. So is there, watch for when I check. Okay. Okay, so yeah, there's some caveats here. So first of all, so search for data I text elements and add the data to them, to their value. And then B, search for data I choice elements and add the data to their data O key value. Okay, so I think that that's pretty much what we want to do when it's activated, right? So this is clicked. We're going to go through all this, compile all the data. Okay, so I'm going to just add one more step up here, just to be thorough. So get the data from the trigger element by looking at all data O key values and looking up the data in the way it wants to be. For example, inner text. Okay. Okay. And we'll go through this again before we start building this out, I think. Okay, so we're going to go through all these. We're going to go through this element. We're going to go through all the children. We're going to look up all of the data O attributes, compile all their data, and then transfer it to this element and all of its children, as long as they have a data I choice or a data I text on them. Choice. Yeah, okay. I was just thinking, like, I could probably shorten this to just be like that and like have this be the key as well, and then I could just get rid of that. But no, I like it being separate, like the type and the data being separate. Okay, so we're going to do that, and then when we look through all these and we apply the data however it needs to be applied. So here we're going to apply it there. We don't have to do anything with these guys, and we just set the value on that. Okay, so that makes sense to me. Okay, so now watch. So first thing, we're going to watch for when a special save button is pressed, crawl up to the data store parent, to the, I think, nearest data store ancestor, grab all the data from this data store and its children and copy it back to the original trigger element's children. Okay, so watch for when the special save button is pressed, is clicked, we'll say. Two, crawl, I guess crawl works. But we could just say like find the nearest data store ancestor element, get, or like maybe transfer, because we'll use the same wording that we used up here, transfer all the data from this data store element and all of its children to the original trigger element and its children. And I think we're going to just like do this the same way. Okay, get the data. Okay. Oops. Get the data from the trigger element by looking at all the data key values and looking up the data in the way that it wants to be looked up. Okay, but we don't need to do that for this one. The input can either be a choice or a text. So all we need to do is search for data text elements and add their value to the data. So just a little reverse of that, and add their data key value to the data. And then, oh, we are going to need this part. Okay, so C, we have get the set the data on the trigger element by looking up all data key values and setting the data in the way it wants to be set, e.g. in the attribute in as inner text, etc. Okay, and we'll just add this here. Get the data from the trigger element by looking up all data key values and getting the data in the way it wants to be gotten. Okay. Okay, so that's cool. And then there's just one more. Calls another function that, or we'll just say like also calls another function. And we'll just say like watch for click events on elements with data key, set the value of that key and the value of the corresponding data value attribute onto a parent element that has the a data choice attribute on it. Attribute equal to the key name on it. Okay, and then let's make sure that all of our elements are make sense to us. So the data store, I don't think that makes sense for that anymore. The wrapper for an element with data key and data value attributes on it. Okay, data key value, special save button. Okay, and we've already spec'd this out. So all we really want, okay, so then, okay, wait, sorry. I'm getting a little distracted, but I'm just trying to like make sure that the specification for this feature is completely present so that next time we can start building this, because I spent all this time on just running through the example. Okay, so look through the ancestors for a data store element, then look through, grab their data. Okay. Yep. Okay. So we got all those parts, and we've got this example, which is great. This was very helpful. That's not 100% true anymore because we have the data itext elements. When is it? Apply any key value pairs from the source elements. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We do that. We do that. Okay. Yeah. So, this is where the value is stored. The key value pair is stored when this type of element is clicked. Okay. Okay, and I'll have like a notes section down here. And we'll just say like, for text inputs with data I text attributes on them, don't reactively update any data O key attributes, just use their values when a save button is clicked, or say like only use their values. Okay, cool. And that's pretty much what this said. And then, yep, we got that. Okay, cool. So now we've got this documentation down a bit, and we're going to rename this to like outputjs specification. And that's because this is what we're going to be using next. And let me just look through. This was my very long brainstorm on the output code. Yep, it's super convenient and simple, elegant, and hacky. Yeah, this is where I first brainstormed the data I store element. I'm still not sure about it. Yeah, images are going to be a pain. But I don't know. I guess I'll deal with that when it comes to it. I'm still not sure how I'm going to deal with images, actually. Yeah. Hopefully it won't be that, like, this is already enough for me, and I respect myself enough that when I realize that something is enough for me, I just go with it. Because writing just this code is probably going to take me multiple days and like a lot of long nights and a lot of brainstorming. And so if I took on, being able to set, upload images and set their values on, data attributes, it might be too much right now, but down the line, after I have this initial kind of framework set up, the skeleton code set up, I'll hopefully have left room for doing that, and it won't be that hard to kind of hack it in there. But I think what I'm planning to do is either use an external service for uploading images, or actually I've done that before and it's not ideal. But the other option would be using an API, so that I can, what I do like is the decoupling between the upload and the data. So like I don't like setting the data at the same time that I upload. I like just being able to upload a file and get back a URL. So I'll probably do that. I'll probably have like an upload service built into the app that I can just like specify, some dimensions or like some filters or, whatever I want, and pass in an image upload, and then it'll give me back a URL that I can use. And maybe I'll, upload that to S3 or something, so that, the image, what do you call it, image serving isn't being done by the server, it can be done by a CDN or something like that. Okay, so yeah, I think this is all for now. Next time, I promise, or I don't promise, but I'm pretty sure next time we're gonna really get into the input code. I know it's been a while, but I just like to make sure that oh shoot, this should be called input. I just like to make sure that, I really know what the code's going to be doing, and I know how it's going to look and how it's going to behave. Just to say like one thing about this code, I don't like that the switch library is so tightly coupled to the input library here, because we're relying on, this switches when to, set the source element for the input library. Now, we're kind of using this as a plugin, so like the input library is dependent on the switch.js library, but not the other way around. So that's kind of okay, but I still don't, it's still not my favorite. But yeah, I guess, this part could be optional, right? And then it's not so tightly coupled. And if you just, if you just set the source element in a different way, that's fine too. If you're using a different modal library or a different pop-up library, then you can, still use these input-output libraries. And the more, I work on this, the more I think that, maybe something like Knockout.js or like another, really small like front-end library that just kind of like attaches itself but isn't necessary for the DOM to actually render, might be useful in this scenario, because building this all out, it does take multiple days. And even though I do like where we've gotten, it's really hard to think through it all, and it's kind of, a pain in the butt to, really make sure this works well. And, all I have is the simplest case, right, where I'm not even allowing that much stuff to happen, right? Like this can't be a password field. I'm going to just limit it to being a text field, right? So there's, it's not going to be an email field, right? It's just going to be a text field. And of course I can expand that down the line, but I'm sure there are people who have really thought through this stuff. And if anyone ever watches this video, one thing that I would really like is some kind of, if you could point me to a resource that just points out new and interesting libraries, like JavaScript libraries and JavaScript projects, regularly. Just like, 10 cool new things a day or whatever. I do have ways of finding those things. I regularly do like GitHub searches for like, data attributes, and just see like, what's out there. Or there is the JavaScript weekly newsletter, which is, a real treasure, because it does surface some pretty novel JavaScript libraries, and I found some really cool stuff through there. So yeah, I mean, if you have any resources like that, I'd love to hear about it. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do for now. I'm going to just commit this code and then we'll be done. So let's go into data.js and oh, I do want to move this output example into here. Where's data.js? Okay. Okay. Oh, and it's, why do I keep calling it output? It's input. Or it's output, input, I guess. Input, output example. Okay. So wrote a new input, output example code. Wrote a thorough input.js specification. Okay, awesome. Okay, well, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Thank you, and have a great night.